On March 9, 1945, twilight descended upon the Mariana Islands in the Pacific, home to American airfields on Guam, Saipan, and Tinian. On the runways carved out of territory reclaimed from the Japanese, ground crews finalized preparations for 325 Boeing B-29 Superfortress bombers scheduled for takeoff. Major General Curtis LeMay, commanding the 21st Bomber Command, had issued a fateful order, drastically altering the bombing tactics of the Pacific War. Into the plane's capacious bomb base, crews loaded cluster bombs, each packed with 1,520 M69 incendiaries containing napalm, capable of burning at temperatures reaching 1800 degrees F. The strategic, yet controversial, target was Tokyo's densely populated Shitamachi district, where 750,000 people lived in predominantly wooden homes within an area of just 12 square miles. At 5:35 p.m., the first silver-gleaming B-29 lifted off from Guam's North Field. The roar of its Wright R-3350 engines pierced the gathering darkness as, one by one, bombers ascended into the sky, departing individually rather than in formation. Their defensive armament had been removed to accommodate a doubled incendiary payload. Pathfinder aircraft formed the vanguard, tasked with marking the target area with a fiery cross visible from afar. The main strike group followed, unleashing their deadly cargo from altitudes of just 5,000 to 7,000 feet. A significant departure from standard bombing heights. The events that followed would demonstrate the overwhelming power of American incendiary warfare and expose the reasons for the Japanese air defense's inability, despite desperate resistance, to prevent the largest single air attack in history. The arrival of the American Boeing B-29 Superfortress in the Pacific Theater marked a new era in aviation, representing the pinnacle of World War II technological prowess. This bomber was the result of colossal effort, requiring over 1.4 million man-hours of meticulous engineering work and immense financial investment, totaling $3 billion. In comparison, the renowned Manhattan Project cost $1.9 billion. This four-engine giant featured a range of advanced solutions, including pressurized crew compartments that ensured comfort and safety at high altitudes, remotely controlled gun turrets that enhanced firepower, and the most powerful piston engines ever installed on aircraft of that era. B-29 production was distributed across several factories nationwide. Boeing handled assembly in Seattle, Renton, and Wichita. Glenn L. Martin was responsible for manufacturing in Omaha, and Bell Aircraft Corporation produced planes in Marietta, Georgia. Each B-29 boasted impressive dimensions, a length of 99 feet and a wingspan reaching 141 feet. 4 Wright R-3350 duplex Cyclone engines, each generating 2,200 horsepower, allowed the aircraft to carry up to 20,000 pounds of bombs over distances of up to 1,600 miles. The Superfortress could ascend to an altitude of 31,850 feet and achieve a maximum speed of 357 miles per hour. By March 1945, American factories had delivered approximately 2,000 B-29s to operational units, ramping up production to achieve an impressive final total of 3,970 aircraft. Such large-scale manufacturing stood as a vivid testament to America's industrial might. The Boeing factory in Wichita alone was producing 4.2 Superfortresses per day, demonstrating incredible efficiency and productivity. Under the command of General Henry Hap Arnold, the 20th Air Force deployed B-29 strategic bombers, initially operating from bases in China starting in June 1944, and then, from November 17, 1944, from the newly captured Mariana Islands. The 21st Bomber Command, based in the Marianas, managed 3 bomber wings, the 73rd and 303rd stationed on Saipan, and the 314th deployed on Guam. These units could field over 300 B-29 bombers in a single mission, each supported by specialized ground crews, working non-stop. Meanwhile, the Japanese air defense system presented a stark contrast. By early 1945, the Imperial Japanese Army and Navy operated with separate, uncoordinated command structures with minimal inter-service interaction. Their primary night fighter, the Nakajima J-1N Gecko, Rikuk Moonlight, had been hastily converted from a reconnaissance aircraft. Armed with two upward-firing 20-metric Type 99 cannons angled at 30 degrees and another pair firing downward, the Gecko theoretically could attack bombers from unexpected directions. However, Japan produced only 479 such aircraft throughout the war, many of which had already been lost in combat by this point. The Kawasaki Ki-45 Toryu, Dragon Killer, served as another night fighter, equipped with a 37mm cannon in the nose and obliquely mounted 120mm cannons. But only 1,710 units of this aircraft had been produced since 1941. Without radar for night interception, these planes relied on searchlights and visual target identification, a virtually impossible task against high-speed bombers at night. Ground defenses were equally weak. Tokyo had fewer than 500 heavy anti-aircraft guns protecting the entire metropolitan area. The Type 99 88mm gun provided the primary high-altitude defense, while the Type 9-8 20mm cannon offered close-range protection with an effective engagement altitude of only 11,500 feet. Critically, Japan lacked fire control radar for its anti-aircraft artillery, forcing reliance on optical rangefinders and sound locators, which were useless in bad weather or at night. The numbers painted a grim picture. While America could deploy hundreds of B-29s from the Mariana Islands alone, Japanese forces likely had only about 200 operational night fighters across all their islands by March 1945. Fuel shortages limited training flights, leaving new pilots with virtually no night flying experience. Aviation gasoline became so scarce that many aircraft were grounded to conserve fuel for defensive operations against an anticipated American invasion. In January 1945, Major General Curtis LeMay assumed command of the 21st Bomber Command, inheriting a strategic bombing campaign that had, until then, failed to yield the desired results. Previous attempts at high-altitude precision bombing from approximately 9,000 meters proved largely ineffective due to powerful jet streams, winds exceeding 320 kilometers per hour, which caused bombs to scatter significantly off their intended targets. Engine overload during ascent with heavy bomb loads also led to frequent mechanical failures, particularly the overheating of magnesium alloy components exceeding safe operating temperatures. An additional problem was cloud cover, which obscured targets 70% of the time, forcing bombers to rely on primitive radar systems. After carefully analyzing these operational challenges, LeMay arrived at an innovative solution that would change the course of the air war against Japan. His new tactics were radical yet logical. LeMay ordered the removal of all defensive guns, except for the tail guns, allowing each B-29 to carry up to 7 tons of incendiary bombs instead of the previous 3.5 tons of high explosives. Lowering flight altitudes to 1,500–2,700 meters allowed aircraft to avoid the effects of jet streams, reduce engine strain, and increase bombing accuracy. Night attacks were intended to minimize the threat from Japanese fighters, which lacked radar and skilled night fighter pilots. Individual aircraft were to navigate using low-run radio signals, attacking in a continuous stream over several hours rather than in concentrated formations. Meteorologists predicted favorable conditions for March 9-10, clear skies with strong surface winds that would help spread fires throughout the target area. The specific target selection for the operation revealed its strategic depth. American military strategists aimed for areas where Japanese artisans, often in small workshops located within residential zones, produced critical components for aircraft, electrical equipment, and precision instruments. Intelligence officers meticulously studied maps developed by the Office of Strategic Services, classifying Tokyo districts by infrastructure density based on pre-war Japanese urban development plans. Ultimately, the target became northeast Tokyo, encompassing the densely populated working-class districts of Asakusa, Honjo, and Fukagawa. In these areas, large families lived in wooden houses, packed tightly together along narrow alleys. The M69 incendiary bomb represented the pinnacle of advanced military development. This hexagonal steel tube, 3 inches in diameter and 20 inches long, weighed 6 pounds. Unlike earlier thermite or magnesium designs, which, though burning at high temperatures, could be extinguished, the M69 utilized napalm, a gelled gasoline created by scientists at Standard Oil and Harvard University. The bombs were dropped in E-46 clusters, each containing 38 bombs that separated at 2,000 feet. Each M69 released a cotton stabilizer, orienting the fuse downward. Upon impact, a delayed fuse activated after 3 to 5 seconds, igniting a white phosphorus charge that scattered burning napalm up to 100 feet in all directions. The delay ensured the weapon detonated on its side, maximizing the spread of incendiary material across buildings. Tests at Dugway Proving Ground in Utah confirmed the M69's effectiveness against mock-ups of Japanese residential homes. The weapon caused numerous fires over extensive areas, and the napalm adhered to surfaces and resisted water extinguishment. Each B-29 carried 40 cluster bombs, containing 1,120 individual incendiary devices. Ultimately, 279 of the 325 bombers that took off reached their target. In Operation Meetinghouse, approximately 424,000 incendiary bombs were dropped on Tokyo, creating an unprecedented concentration of incendiary devices. American strategists anticipated that such density would ignite a self-sustaining firestorm, where individual fires would merge, generating powerful air currents that would spread the inferno beyond the initial impact zone. On March 9th, the first B-29 took off from Guam shortly after 5:30 p.m. At the controls was the mission commander, Brigadier General Thomas Sarsfield Power of the 314th Bomb Wing. Over the subsequent hours, squadrons of bombers departed from the 3 island bases at intervals of just 50 seconds. The impending 14-hour round trip would be a severe test for both personnel and machinery, demanding maximum concentration and endurance. Crews, dressed in lighter flight suits instead of bulky attire, appreciated the advantage of warmer temperatures at lower altitudes. The absence of gun weight, gunners, and ammunition allowed the B-29s to climb efficiently, contributing to fuel savings during the 1,500-mile journey to Japan's shores. As they approached the target, the snow-capped peak of Mount Fuji served as a clear navigational landmark, unmistakably pointing the way. At approximately 10:30 p.m., air raid sirens pierced the night silence of Tokyo. However, most of the population, lulled into a false sense of security, chose to remain in their homes. Previous high-altitude raids, which had caused little significant destruction, had bred a dangerous complacency among the city's residents. Tragically, Tokyo's civil defense system proved utterly unprepared for the impending catastrophe. In the vast metropolis, there were only 18 concrete bomb shelters, capable of housing just 90,000 people out of a population of 4.3 million. Most families relied on bugo, shallow trenches covered with boards or primitive dugouts, which offered virtually no protection against the deadly effects of incendiary bombs. The city's fire department, numbering 8,000 personnel, was equipped primarily with hand pumps and buckets, clearly insufficient to combat large-scale fires. Neighborhood associations had formed civil defense units consisting predominantly of the elderly, women and teenagers, armed only with buckets of sand and containers of water. In the pre-dawn silence of March 10, 1945, at Jōshoku 08, the first silhouettes of B-29s appeared over the Tokyo horizon, harbingers of imminent disaster. These advanced scouts, like birds of prey, glided in from various directions to precisely mark the doomed area. From an altitude of just 5,000 feet, they unleashed their deadly cargo upon the city, M47 napalm bombs. These diabolical devices instantly transformed the night's darkness into an ominous glow, etching a giant flaming cross onto the city map. Soon after the scouts, the main armada of bombers followed, their sights locked onto the blazing landmark. The weather conditions that night seemed to conspire with a destructive force: crystal clear skies and gusty winds, blowing at speeds of 17 to 28 miles per hour, with individual gusts reaching 45 miles per hour. Like swarms of locusts, the M69 clusters detached from the bombers and hurtled toward the ground. Eyewitnesses, mesmerized by the horror, recounted how these metallic objects glinted ominously in the light of the burgeoning inferno, portending an unprecedented devastation. Within minutes, thousands of individual flames erupted across the entire target zone. Fanned by the strong winds, the fire began its frantic dance, leaping from one structure to another, merging individual fires into a single, all-consuming firestorm. Ground temperatures soared to an unimaginable 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, incinerating glass and warping metal. The superheated air generated powerful updrafts, creating fire whirlwinds that lifted debris into the sky. Streets turned into rivers of flame. Asphalt melted, and wooden buildings collapsed under the onslaught of unbearable heat. The roar of the inferno drowned out all other sounds, while dense smoke and heat reduced visibility to mere feet. In Tokyo's Sumida district, 24-year-old Yoshiko Hashimoto was in her home with her 13-month-old child when the city came under massive bombardment. Her husband, an army officer, was performing his duty in another part of the metropolis during that tragic moment. Yoshiko later recalled for historical records, "The B-29 planes rained down countless incendiary bombs on us. The sound was as if a powerful downpour had erupted. I was shocked by the ferocity of this air raid. I had never seen anything like it before. With relentless speed, the fires engulfed everything, forcing Yoshiko, along with her parents, child, and sisters, to flee through streets overflowing with desperately evacuating residents. The narrow alleys of Shitamachi became a deadly trap as thousands of people simultaneously tried to escape certain death. In this chaotic scramble, parents lost their children, and the elderly collapsed, unable to continue moving. Firefighting teams, confronted by unbearable temperatures, abandoned their equipment, realizing that approaching the flames was impossible. By the Sumida River, a scene of utter madness unfolded before Yoshiko's eyes. Burning debris fell around us. The wind intensified with each passing minute. Flaming objects, signs, wooden doors, and household items flew through the air like leaves in a hurricane. Warehouses located on both sides of the river were engulfed in flames. In a desperate attempt to save lives, her father pushed Yoshiko and her child into the water. This act saved them. But Yoshiko's mother, as well as her father and sister Etsuko, perished in the fiery hell. Similar tragedies unfolded across the burning city. Those who sought refuge in canals faced extremely high water temperatures. Others died, trampled in stampedes as thousands simultaneously tried to reach the water. The hurricane-force winds caused by the firestorm were so strong that they moved people significant distances. Bodies were found far from their original locations. Police stations, hospitals, and designated evacuation centers became engulfed in flames. At Kikukawa Elementary School, which served as a shelter, investigators found only metal objects and charred remains among the ashes where hundreds had hoped to find safety. Buddhist temples, which had stood for centuries, were destroyed along with those who sought refuge within them. The extreme conditions caused by the firestorm meant that even those in shelters faced severe problems due to heat and smoke. Superheated air caused irreversible damage to respiratory tracts even with brief exposure. Following the devastating raid on Tokyo on March 10, 1945, estimates of casualties varied significantly, reflecting the chaos and scale of the tragedy. The U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey recorded a horrific figure of 87,793 dead and 40,918 injured. In contrast, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department reported 83,793 dead and 40,918 injured. The Tokyo Fire Department estimated the number of victims even higher, 97,000 dead and 125,000 injured. Subsequently, historical consensus suggests that the total death toll exceeded 100,000, making this raid more lethal than either of the atomic bombings. The attack leveled 267,171 buildings across 15.8 square miles, destroying a quarter of all structures in Tokyo. Over 1 million survivors were left homeless. The city's industry suffered colossal damage. More than half of Tokyo's manufacturing capacity was located in small workshops intimately interwoven with residential areas. Their destruction dealt a severe blow to the production of key war materials. Thousands of skilled workers died or were forced to leave the city. American losses were minimal in comparison to the Japanese side. 14 B-29s did not return to base, and 96 American airmen were listed as killed or missing. Some bombers encountered powerful turbulence caused by fire whirlwinds, leading to loss of control. Others sustained damage from anti-aircraft fire, although Japanese gunners struggled to track aircraft flying at such unusually low altitudes. Crew members later recalled smelling smoke even at their operating altitude. Crews, who initially doubted General LeMay's chosen tactics, were shocked by the scale and consequences of the operation. General LeMay later reflected on the moral implications. "I suppose if I had lost the war, I would have been tried as a war criminal." General Arnold, conversely, sent congratulations. "It shows your crews have the guts for anything." The results of the Operation Meetinghouse immediately impacted the American command's subsequent strategy. Over the next 10 days, similar raids were conducted on Nagoya, Osaka, and Kobe, targeting Japan's 4 largest cities. The campaign was then paused because the 21st Bomber Command had depleted its incendiary bomb supplies. Production was immediately increased, with American factories prioritizing the manufacture of M69 bombs. The striking disparity between American and Japanese potential reached its peak. The United States, possessing unparalleled industrial might, could quickly replace lost B-29 bombers. In contrast, Japan, whose economy was exhausted by the war, was unable to rebuild destroyed urban centers or replace its fallen workforce. America's industrial output surpassed Japan's by a staggering tenfold, vividly demonstrating the imbalance of power. Despite technological superiority significantly enhancing the effectiveness of every American weapon, the financial cost of the B-29 program, estimated at $3 billion, exceeded Japan's entire military budget for 1945. While by mid-1945 America was producing a staggering 50,000 tons of incendiary bombs per month, Japan struggled to provide its forces with even basic ammunition supplies. The systematic nature of American operations reflected a scientific approach to warfare. The Chemical Warfare Service meticulously recreated models of Japanese urban blocks at the Dugway Proving Ground using pre-war architectural plans. The Standard Oil Development Company, in turn, developed napalm through extensive chemical research. Harvard and Chicago universities contributed analytical studies on fire spread patterns. This integration of scientific research with military operations sharply contrasted with Japanese military doctrine, which prioritized traditional values over material considerations, an approach that proved completely inadequate against modern warfare methods. Japan's inability to develop effective countermeasures clearly demonstrated its strategic limitations. Despite the devastating blow on February 25th, when 28,000 buildings were destroyed by fire, authorities took no significant steps to bolster fire defenses. Proposals for creating fire breaks by demolishing buildings remained on paper. Evacuation plans for the population existed only in theory. Military leadership, ignoring intelligence about impending massive incendiary raids, insisted that civilians remain in their homes. This situation resulted from interagency coordination failures and ineffective leadership. The limited capabilities of Japanese night fighter aircraft revealed a serious technological lag. Individual pilots, such as Lieutenant Sachio Endo, achieved outstanding results, reportedly shooting down 8 B-29s. However, these instances were exceptions rather than the rule. Most night fighter pilots could not detect targets in the dark, especially when smoke from fires obscured everything. Lacking onboard radar, pilots relied on ground controllers using acoustic detection methods, which became useless once fires began. The few pilots who managed to intercept B-29s often found their 20mm cannons ineffective against the bomber's robust construction. Success was achieved only with critical hits to engines or fuel tanks. In a desperate attempt to destroy enemy bombers, some pilots resorted to ramming, sacrificing themselves. The tragedy in Tokyo highlighted structural deficiencies in Japan's fire safety system. The city's fire department, with 286 vehicles, mostly outdated hand pumps, required a significant number of operators. Weak water pressure made effective suppression of large-scale fires impossible, and communication breakdowns led to water supply interruptions. The firefighters' tactics, focused on protecting individual buildings using traditional methods, proved entirely ineffective against thousands of simultaneous blazes. When the firestorm erupted, most fire crews were quickly incapacitated, their equipment destroyed, and personnel forced to flee. This disaster inflicted deep psychological trauma on survivors. Many spoke of the collapse of traditional defense systems, which eroded public confidence in the authorities' ability to ensure safety. Refugees fleeing blazing Tokyo spread tales of horror across the country, starkly contrasting with official war communiques. Disbelief in government information led to reduced attendance at factories, as the civilian population lost faith in the authorities' ability to protect them. Soon, the phrase "ordinary air raid" became common, as Japanese cities were systematically subjected to devastating incendiary attacks. By August 1945, 66 Japanese cities had fallen victim to extensive firebombing, leaving a significant portion of Japan's urban area in ruins even before the tragic events of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The triumphant conclusion of Operation Meetinghouse undoubtedly had a significant impact on American Command's strategic planning for Operation Downfall, the large-scale invasion of the Japanese Empire. Military analysts concluded that relentless mass incendiary bombings could neutralize the remaining Japanese industrial power by October. General LeMay, known for his decisiveness, even expressed the opinion that strategic bombing alone would be sufficient to force Japan's unconditional surrender, thereby avoiding a bloody invasion. According to Joint Chiefs of Staff estimates, the incessant bombings had already caused approximately 900,000 civilian deaths by that point, and if the conflict continued, this figure could escalate to a horrific scale of millions. These terrifying projections played a decisive role in President Truman's decision regarding the use of atomic weapons. He viewed them not as a replacement for conventional bombings, but as a powerful psychological weapon capable of breaking the enemy's will. However, behind the dry figures and strategic calculations lay a tragedy of human lives that knew no national boundaries. American bomber crews carried a heavy psychological burden for many years, trying to comprehend their role in these destructive operations, even within the strict confines of wartime. Richard Bale, who served in the 9th Bomb Group, recalled distinctly seeing the raging fires from his aircraft, an eerie image forever etched in his memory. Japanese citizens who survived the bombings were forced to live with long-term physical and emotional traumas. Families on both sides of the Pacific endured irreplaceable losses that left a deep mark on several generations. The devastating raid left an indelible mark in the form of orphan children and inconsolable widows, placing an unbearable strain on the social welfare system and exacerbating post-war hardships. Large-scale reconstruction efforts revealed the horrifying extent of the destruction. Medical facilities at the epicenter of the tragedy were wiped off the map, along with schools, temples, and administrative buildings. The morning of March 10th revealed a completely different landscape, where once prosperous eastern Tokyo stood. For many miles, scorched earth stretched, covered in a thick layer of ash, with only occasional concrete and brick skeletons remaining. Survivors, disoriented in the unrecognizable landscape, desperately tried to find familiar landmarks that no longer existed. Clearing the debris required heavy machinery. Identifying the numerous victims proved impossible. Mass burials were conducted for weeks. Waterways remained blocked by wreckage for a long time. The damage inflicted on industry exceeded the most pessimistic forecasts. Eastern Tokyo was home to thousands of small workshops where entire families toiled to create specialized parts, precision tools, electrical components, and mechanical assemblies. Their destruction led to severe disruptions in the supply chains supporting larger enterprises. The loss of experienced artisans, turners, and technical specialists whose training took years was irreplaceable. Productivity in surviving enterprises plummeted as workers, broken by personal tragedies, faced housing problems and declining morale. The sequential expansion of the military campaign gained momentum, fueled by a continuous replenishment of incendiary munitions. In May, operations resumed with improved tactics, significantly increasing their effectiveness. By July, B-29 strategic bombers began dropping warning leaflets before massive raids, preemptively notifying civilians about cities that would soon become targets. These psychological maneuvers demonstrated absolute air superiority. Such missions became routine, with some encountering only minor resistance. Japan's defensive capabilities steadily declined due to the loss of experienced pilots, the depletion of ammunition, and the collapse of its civil defense system. The international legal aspects of these bombings continue to spark lively historical debates. The 1907 Hague Convention addressed the bombing of undefended cities, but the interpretation of defended and military objectives proved highly complex. After the war, tribunals prosecuted a number of leaders for attacks on civilian populations, but Allied bombing campaigns remained outside their purview. The established precedent that military necessity could justify targeting civilian areas influenced the further development of international humanitarian law, despite significant advancements in precision weaponry. The skillful utilization of weather conditions to amplify the military operations' impact revealed the foresight of American command. The Tokyo bombing on the night of March 9-10 was deliberately timed to coincide with a period of strong winds, which meteorologists predicted would arise after a prolonged drought. Weather specialists meticulously studied Japan's meteorological conditions, aiming to identify the most favorable circumstances for fire propagation. Wind speeds that night ranged from 27 to 72 kilometers per hour, depending on the area, exceeding even the boldest forecasts. This clever combination of meteorological science and military planning became a prime example of the innovative operational methods employed by the American armed forces. However, the experience of the B-29 bomber crews during this mission was far from what strategists had anticipated. Many airmen were deeply shaken, observing the colossal destruction unfolding below. Crew members reported that smoke and atmospheric disturbances were palpable even at high altitudes. Pilots struggled to control the aircraft amidst severe turbulence caused by powerful updrafts of hot air. Some subsequently filed requests for transfer to other assignments, attempting to reconcile their participation in the operation with their personal moral principles. Others, conversely, focused on the strategic objective of swiftly ending the bloody conflict, justifying their actions by the necessity of achieving victory. The Japanese armed forces' response to the massive raid highlighted deficiencies in command organization and coordination. Anti-aircraft units fired intensely, but their effectiveness was low due to the darkness and dense smoke. Fighter aircraft conducted about 90 sorties, but achieved only a small number of intercepts of enemy bombers. Fire department leadership was not timely or adequately informed about the catastrophic scale of the aerial attack. Military leadership primarily focused its efforts on protecting government buildings and military installations, while the city's residential areas were engulfed in flames. Communication and connectivity were severely disrupted due to infrastructure destruction, and messengers faced insurmountable difficulties trying to navigate through the burning areas. The post-war preservation of memory regarding these tragic events reflects evolving historical perspectives. Unlike Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which gained global renown, the massive firebombing of Tokyo remained in the shadows and was little known outside of Japan. Survivors of this tragedy actively worked for decades to ensure their personal testimonies were documented and preserved for future generations. Katsumoto Saotome, himself a survivor of the bombing, founded a research center dedicated to studying the Tokyo raids and the devastating consequences of the war, striving to preserve invaluable testimonies that might otherwise have been irrevocably lost. The task of commemorating civilian victims while acknowledging the complex historical context has given rise to multifaceted memorial narratives. In modern military circles, Operation Meetinghouse is closely studied to draw lessons about the potential and limits of air power. This air raid clearly demonstrated that the destruction of cities alone does not guarantee an immediate enemy surrender. Imperial Japan continued its fierce resistance for another 5 months. The operation proved that technological superiority can negate geographical obstacles, but it also highlighted the blurring of lines between military and civilian targets in modern conflicts. The transformation from precision strikes to carpet bombing revealed a dangerous dynamic of escalation inherent in total war. Initially, the 21st Bomber Command adhered to a strategy of precision strikes, consistent with accepted military doctrine. However, when these strikes did not yield the expected results, General LeMay decided to switch to carpet incendiary bombing. This method proved simpler to execute and consequently more destructive. It is important to note that this evolution resulted from operational decisions rather than formal policy changes. By March 1945, attacks on urban areas became commonplace, with target selection determined by population density and industrial concentration, rather than the presence of specific military objectives. The tragic events left an indelible mark on the hearts of those who survived the horrors of that night. Documents attest to deep emotional wounds that did not heal for decades. Children who lost their loved ones in an instant never learned what happened to their families. Historical archives preserve the words of Yoshiko Hashimoto, whose memories serve as a reminder of irreplaceable loss. That terrible evening will forever remain in my memory. My parents and sister died, and my child and I survived. I think of them every day. The social fabric of working-class Tokyo was torn to shreds. Large families who had lived together for centuries were scattered across the country. Thriving businesses were reduced to ruins. Neighborly relationships built over many generations vanished in an instant. An assessment of Operation Meetinghouse is impossible without analyzing its role in ending the war. Although historians still debate whether strategic bombing alone could have forced Japan to surrender, it is clear that these raids hasten the collapse of the war machine. The systematic destruction of cities created unbearable conditions that made further resistance virtually impossible. Emperor Hirohito later cited the bombings and the country's internal situation as key factors influencing the decision to surrender. The tragedy in Tokyo, where 100,000 people perished in the flames, was one of the factors that hastened the end of the bloody war. It is presumed that without this operation, the conflict might have dragged on, resulting in even greater casualties, potentially numbering in the millions. This stark calculation can hardly comfort those who lived through the horror of those days, but it played a role in shaping the strategic decisions of the time. Operation Meetinghouse serves as a vivid illustration of how war transformed from limited clashes of armies into a total conflict affecting all of society. Urban neighborhoods, built through the labor of many generations, turned to ash in a matter of hours under the blows of weapons created thousands of miles from Japan. The war, which began with territorial ambitions, concluded with the application of advanced technologies unleashed on civilians whose involvement in military actions was minimal. The contrast between powerful B-29 bombers carrying their deadly payload of incendiary bombs and Japanese firefighting brigades armed with only rudimentary means vividly demonstrated the decisive importance of industrial and technological superiority in modern warfare. Paradoxically, the historical significance of the Tokyo firestorm was overshadowed by the atomic bombings. Just 5 months later, the massive casualties of the March tragedy receded into the background against the horror of nuclear weapons, leading to an underestimation of the destructive power of conventional bombings. This historical nuance may have contributed to the further development and use of conventional weapons of mass destruction, particularly various incendiary devices, in subsequent conflicts that avoided the prohibitions imposed on nuclear weapons. The provided statistics offer only a superficial glimpse into the tragedy. 325 B-29 bombers were dispatched for the raid, but only 279 reached their intended target. 1,665 tons of deadly incendiary bombs were dropped on the city. 15.88 square miles of urban area were engulfed in flames. 271 buildings were reduced to ruins. Approximately 100,000 people died. Around 1 million residents were left homeless and became refugees. Behind the dry figures of statistics lie personal tragedies: American airmen carrying out command orders, Japanese families living in the fire-engulfed districts, children who lost their parents, people who survived hell and struggled to cope with irreplaceable loss. Operation Meetinghouse remains in memory as the most destructive bombing in human history. It serves not as a testament to military might, but as a stark reminder of the horrific consequences modern warfare can unleash when strategic objectives justify the destruction of civilian populations and entire nations become victims of a merciless industrial conflict.